Hey, I'm Dayne Gingrich, and we're here at Rex Pickleball Center in Oregon. We're on our Pickleball Mindset Book Tour Clinic.
Pickleball Fountain of Youth with Hall of Famer Steve Paranto.
Hey, this is Steve Paranto with the Pickleball Fountain of Youth podcast, and we have two very special guests today. I have pages of questions I want to ask both Dayne Gingrich and Jill Martin. They're on a tour right now, and we're lucky that they came to the Northwest and you guys came to Rex.
Yes.
And this is quite a book. I've read it, and I think a lot of my students now are going to say, well, Dayne said this. I know I'm going to be hearing that even from my mixed doubles partner.
Yeah.
Well, Dayne said I should do this.
That's right. Everybody talks about they want to be better, whether it's basketball, tennis, football, whatever, but we're, pickleball, everybody's talking about wanting to be great, but very few people will actually do what the greats do. And that's kind of the foundation, right? It's not just physical grinding. And we were talking about in our clinics, right? Like everything we see with our eyes is physicality, and we watch YouTube videos and we think Ben's doing this physically and Annalie's doing this, but right? And it's all mental, 100% is mental, then the physicality follows. The challenge is we can't see with our eyes the mental game, right? We can see with our eyes the physical game, so everybody puts a priority on the grip and the grip pressure and the shoulders, and those are important,
That's
but
what I was going to ask.
Maybe outside of the very, very beginner where you got to the grip and so they're not hitting with their handle and you got to do the grip, but
right.
Very quickly after you're a pure beginner, we should start talking about things that are why oriented and the opponent's oriented, and I just think we as coaches and teachers need to try to change that model.
But it's really interesting. So training a number of people, I am getting to see more kind of people entering into senior pro and people training other senior pros. People who I see who are doing well with in those moments of they're the ones who somehow pull it off. The way that they work off of the court is very distinct and different than the people who are coming close but not seizing. There is a work ethic, like a tenacity and a grit that is very different. And it's not that everybody's not working hard out there, but it's that extra. Yeah. I used to, not to name names, All-Top Merchant.
She went all-top. She went there.
When I'll give him, I always call it the All-Top Extra. I'll say, okay, we're going to do 10 of these, and he is always going to do an extra one, or if he does one that he doesn't feel like should count, he'll discount that one and do another one. There's just a way of, I think, approaching the work that you do that I see with Dayne, with All-Top, some of the kind of...
the first name you said again?
Some of the highest, kind of the highest performers, that is just, there's something a little bit different about how they come into a session and how they work.
Yeah. When I think of the current pros that are now making strides, that were losing second round every time a year ago, who are now making it to semis, finals, winning.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's that little margin that's making a difference between those.
Well, the physicality changed, so now you have a lot of pros really committed to the physicality. Not as much still committed to the mentality part. That's still kind of like a woo-woo thing. You get a couple, but the ones that are working with the physicality, they are improving their mentality. Like it's making them more confident, it's making them believe in themselves more. So even though they don't think they're working that mindset, by working that physical piece, and to her point about the margins, and they just do extra, that instinctual, that just automatically gives them that level of belief and confidence, knowing that their peers probably aren't doing that extra set or rep.
The subject came up about muscle memory. And the first time I'd ever heard anybody say, well, your muscles, there is no such thing as muscle memory.
Yeah.
And obviously, when you think about it, you're right. The muscles are just it's the brain sending those. But I've mentioned that to pickleball players. No, your muscles have memory. And
they don't.
Talk about that.
Yeah, so that I like to use that as a shock value. I like to use that and say muscle memory doesn't exist, so people sit up in their chair, right? Of course, but they take that and they say, oh, so I don't have to repeat and I don't have to practice. That's not what we're saying, but now I got you to listen. Now let's talk about it, right? And so it's first, and I'm not going to talk out of my wheelhouse as a brain guy. Like I will not go into the the physics of it, you know. But we do know that nothing happens physically without our brain and our mind and our vision, right? I think we take for granted that every ball we hit, we're visualizing, we're seeing before we hit it. Whether you know it or not, even a 3-0 is hitting to a spot. If they can hit anywhere near their spot, they are seeing the shot in their mind before they make contact. They just don't know they are, right? I have never seen, outside of a huge windstorm, the net move or the lines move. So when you're on the run, those things haven't moved, which means you see something, you see an area at least, a side of the court at least, right? That you're trying to hit to, and my goodness, you're doing it, right? And then as you get more and more advanced, it becomes tiny, tiny spots. And before you can hit a tiny spot, you need to see the spot, and you need to understand why the spot, then you hit the shot. But we all think we're just gonna go rep the spot, rep a shot. But because we haven't really trained our visual mind and our feel mind the way we should, when we get into a tournament, sometimes it feels like we've never drilled before. And that to me is what I mean by muscles don't, like there is no muscle memory, right? There has to be a connection with your visual and feel connected with, it's not an either or, it's an and.
Yeah,
right?
That I think is probably one of the biggest things that people are going to get out of this is visualization. You tell us how that
I won't step onto a court until I've played the last few points out. Now for tournaments, I play the last couple points out in my mind into match point so that I can, when I'm waiting to go on the court, I have already won the match in my mind. I've seen how I've won the match in my mind. I've seen the celebration, my partner and I, and then I've come to the net and I've tapped my opponents and said, nice match. And that is a routine I use over and over. So, closing your eyes, this has been proven that the brain does not understand the difference between a real life, emotionally connected visualization and physical practice. That's proven. That's not a Dayne opinion. So I use that as another weapon. It's another repetition weapon and a training tool. So before I step out on any match court, I will close my eyes, I'll go to a quiet spot. That story was specifically at San Clemente in the locker room where I just tucked myself away. But if there's not that, then I will go behind a tree. I'll just go and I'll just see the last 2 points, match point, celebration, and then I'll walk on the court. So that to me is one of my strongest rituals. Is I get emotionally ready for the match.
The sitting and visualizing is pretty uncomfortable for people before they know how to do it. So like having what I see with Dayne is he has the discipline to do the parts that maybe you don't want to do. It's like eating the kale before having like your ice cream. And I notice even with myself, I know we've talked about it time and time again, but it's really, visualization is hard for me. Like that is really hard. It's a muscle that I'm still building. And so like I would much rather go on the court and drill for 6 hours than sit down and visualize a match. And so it's like finding that connection between understanding the value and then finding the discipline and work ethic to do the parts that you know will benefit your game, even though it's a lot less fun than going and drilling with your partner. Yeah. But do you enjoy it? I'm actually curious, do you enjoy the visualization?
You're asking me something. Wow. Mark that.
Like, is it work for you? Do you enjoy it, or do you have to force yourself to do it?
I used to have to force myself to do it. It's a really good question. So we're just going to take over. I used to force myself to do it, but then what drives me is I watch my play after a match, and I watch my peers before tournaments just to remind myself of certain patterns. Right?
That's what
we play each other all the time, that we kind of know patterns, but I want to make sure I'm like, ooh, he's been practicing. I want to make sure, right? But no, every night I watch Ben. I've only watched Ben. I always watch Ben. It's 100% Ben, and when it's Ben, then I get to watch other players too, because they all play Ben. And I watch Ben, and I've always said this, like now maybe it's changing now, but I know I'm 50 plus, I'm not 20, so I'm not going to be the aggro all Sean that's coming through, ripping thirds, ripping fists, flying over and poaching. Like if I was 20, I might watch somebody else. But what Ben resonated with me because how smooth and just chill. Everybody was kind of going crazy.
Well, like one theme that we had a couple times, it actually almost the same sentence was said a few times during different clinics. There was frustration by players about being beat by lobbers, and it was like, but the preface was we were better than them. We're better pickleball players, but they lobbed us,
And that's why they
and
lost.
that's why they lost. And so that's an interesting part. And I haven't played enough other sports to know whether there was a similar evolution, but it is interesting. And I kind of said the same thing about my sadness about the changing game, but there's this idea that there is a pickleball, there's a right way to play, and there's a right way to be good, and then you can win the wrong way that isn't pickleball, which I haven't run into another sport like that where people feel kind of possessive of the definition of where skill lies and what's a skillful way to play and what's a fair way to
You
win.
can be the best stinker in the world, but if you can't block, those don't do you much good.
Yeah.
But it's so funny how people think, oh, that's the wrong way to play because all they do is hit hard.
Right. It's just, like this is, and we preach in this in all of our clinics, right? Like there is no such thing as right or wrong. There is no such thing as you should or you shouldn't. The answer should always be can I, or the question, can I or can't I, right? And it's not, you shouldn't hit that because it's low, because my quote unquote red ball is Ben's green ball. Like, so it's all relative. So should or shouldn't says who, right? Can or can't. So yes, maybe in a tournament, you shouldn't hit that ball off of your ankles because you can't. Not because of what some book or cliche rule said, but because you can't right now in a tournament. But maybe the shot you can't hit in practice, you should be trying, right? And so instead of just, we have players just, they're walking this binary, I should or I shouldn't. This is the right or the wrong way, right? Versus there's no such thing. What boggles my mind is that top pros and or even top 4-5, top 5-0, they're so locked in a way. Like just it's their way, or it's because I saw her doing it or him doing it, and they have a very difficult time looking across the net and saying, wait a minute, he or she likes this. They're really good at it and they're beating me, so what do I have to do to alter what they want? Right? And that to me is the game. Yeah. That is the game. It's not what we want, it's what they don't want. And it's our job to figure out what they don't want, and then the shot we must learn in order to give them what they don't want.
Yeah.
It's very easy. It's very simple. Very simple.
So you just have to have every shot in your toolbox so that you can use that against them.
It's hard in the tournament, but it's easy when you go home and practice it. It's first recognizing and then going home, and I need this shot in my book, and I need this shot, and I need this shot, because when I come across these good players, they don't like that shot. Allowing them to play the game they want to play. You have Weinbach next to you, and you have your hands that are very good. You should attack it all at all costs and then cause the chaos. So the chaos is just essentially taking them out of what they want and putting them into a faster, having to feel a little uncomfortable type of mindset, realizing that all Dave and I had to do, and even to this day it stands true, is all we have to do is win 57% of those attacks and we win the match. You know, and that's been, I've proven that day, and I talked to Colin a lot, and we've proven that 56, 57%, they're winning 6 and 6, right? They're winning 11-6, 11-7. And so that's what I did when Jane said that. I just wouldn't sit and dink for an hour and a half. I mean, I had to dink, but I would just take the first chance I got to attack, and attack early and attack often. Now, saying that, they adjusted, right? And so the first two, they adjusted, and I realized they were either studying or they were just getting better, and their hands were getting better, and everybody just started getting better, just like with everything. Everybody started getting better. And my early attacks weren't working anymore, because they were ready for it. I have a two-hander. I've had to adjust my two-hander 3 times. I had to make some other, and now I'm having to dink a little longer to create the chaotic moment that I want, but I'm still in my mind's eye. I can dink for 50 if you need me to dink, but in my mind, the quicker I can get you into chaos, and now I have I have Althoff as majority, I have Mircha and Scott Crandall, right? Yeah. Both very good players and great hands. So no matter who of those I'm playing with, I know that I'm going to start something, and so that
they can respond to the reply when you start it, you're the one that knows it's happening.
Yes. If you put the grind and the work and the learning and the growth as your priority, there's always an outlet. There's no such thing as finish, right? But when you put the podium as our North Star, there's a finish.
Yeah.
Right? And then the next day, you got to start over, right? But the learning process. So I've just fallen in love all over again with trying to just be better.
Yeah.
Just trying to and there's so many examples. We're watching pickleball. It's evolving week to week.
Yeah.
And I want to try to keep up.
Keep up. Yeah. Keeping up is not easy.
Nope.
If I was still teaching the game and playing the game the way I did just 2 years ago, I wouldn't be keeping up.
Right.
With techniques, spins, the paddles, the athletic players. all of that has improved so much.
Our goal here, Jill Martin and I, is to bring a different type of thinking to the pickleball court. So instead of focusing on just our skill, the whole clinic is going to be based on focusing on what our opponents are doing and how to recognize patterns and bring it back to what we're doing. So this has been super fun, super energetic. The energy here has been amazing, so we're going to keep rocking out. Listen, it is never about your shot first. It's always about their shot. Back up into your shot. Your shot is 100% dependent on what you know about them.